speak also about sustainable competitive advantage. Do you want to share a little bit what you mean by that?
Yeah, so sustainable competitive advantage actually comes out of kind of the old models of strategy. So Michael Porter is sort of the famous strategy person with the 5 forces models and all that kind of stuff. Those models assume that you can position yourself within the bounds of a well-defined industry. And today, that isn't actually the case, which is why those models are sort of giving way to these more, do I understand the industry or innovation ecosystem in which I operate? So how does Google start making cars and making thermostats? That's not because they are positioned in the car industry or in the thermostat industry. So they don't think in terms of this, what does sustainable competitive advantage mean? They think instead in terms of, in their case, sort of information and how do I gather it, manage it, et cetera, which leads them to then jump into these other spaces. So they're not drawing a box around themselves and saying, how do I compete against A, B, or C? They're playing in this bigger ecosystem, which arguably, yeah, I don't know if Steve Jobs did that so much, but he did to some extent, right? I mean, he didn't say, here's an iPod and that's just like a Sony Walkman. He said, no, the iPod has to have music with it. I have to be able to, so he thought more broadly than, I'll just compete against the Walkman, right, which didn't have a music ecosystem around it.
Gets back to your comment about experience, doesn't it?
Well, ultimately, those two go hand in hand, right? If I say I'm a car manufacturer and I put a box around myself, then I'm going to limit myself to designing cup holders in cars, right? That's not quite fair. I'm going to limit myself to designing cars, right? But if I think about the entire customer experience of getting from point A to point B, then I'm going to notice that people are sitting in traffic all the time, and that's not so much fun. And so I'll begin to think about other things that I might design, or I might even start to think more broadly about what if people don't actually want to own their cars? Right. Then what business do I need to be in? And it might be something beyond selling cars and having this whole infrastructure to do that. So absolutely, if I actually look at a customer experience, then I might define my industry in a different way.
Right. I mean, I'm interested in your experience with the auto industry and the whole navigation system too. Because it used to be, it was a big deal. Oh, I have a GPS system in my car embedded, and now everyone has their phone and they use that. Phone is, right? So what do you think?
So if I'm thinking about the customer experience in mind, and I'm understanding the resources and capabilities that each actor in my ecosystem has, then I would know that my customer already has the capability to find their way somewhere with a GPS on their phone, and I might think instead of building it into the car. And I don't want to speak for any given auto company. Here's my guess, is that there was a conversation about how can we get more money out of the sale of a car. Oh, we could get a stream of revenue for doing updates with our own GPS or whatever the case might be, right? Which is a different model than thinking, what if we formed a partnership with Waze or you know, some of these other players, what might we do? So the mindset of we're in the business of delivering this thing is different than here's this whole experience. We only own pieces of it, but we better work with the other players that are part of that experience. And that's a very different mindset.